We are parents, we are doctors, we are first responders, teachers, and concerned citizens who have found ourselves at a crossroads. We see our freedoms being stripped away, and we can no longer stay silent. We are millions strong, united in a thundering voice and imperative mission that cannot and will not be ignored. We are standing up for the basic human right to raise our own children, earn a living, and make our own medical decisions without the tyrannical overreach that has been forced upon us here in California, across the country, and around the world. We are here to amplify the voices, moving the needle, bringing forth truth, and provide education and resources with tangible tools and expert insights. We are the Unity Project, and this is our podcast. What's up, everyone? I'm Laura Sextro, CEO of the Unity Project and your podcast host. On today's episode, you will hear from Matt Beaudreau, an incredible leader in the alternative education space. In addition to being the founder of Acton Academy Placer and institutions all over the world, Matt is an advocate for our youth and co-founder of Apogee Strong Mentorship Program. I was excited to talk to Matt about all the work he is doing to help parents find alternative education solutions as public schools become conveyor belts of indoctrination. He talks about his playbook for creative insubordination and playing the game of college, and the need for strong mentors in the lives of children. In this episode, he highlights all that is wrong with public schooling and how you can find a better option for your family. Welcome, Matt Beaudreau, to the Unity Project podcast. We're so excited to have you here. Let me just tell everyone a little bit about your background. You are the founder at Acton Academy Placer Schools. You're the co-founder at Apogee Strong Mentorship Program. You're a host at the Essential 11 podcast. And you also help driven entrepreneurs open student-led campuses for real education and freedom. In addition to that, you have a pretty strong background, it looks like, in public speaking. You've actually delivered TED Talks, as well as speaking to over 250,000 people across the globe with clients ranging from Lockheed Martin to the United States Air Force to Caterpillar and Honeywell. And I think it's a really important fact, our guest, fun fact, I should say, about Matt, that he used to have, he dabbled in a little bit of kickboxing and MMA. So I thought that was a really fun fact to learn about you.
That's awesome.
And today, so yeah, welcome. I'm excited to have you here.
Honor's mine.
Let's just jump into this. Let's talk about what's going on in the schools. One of the things that we hear about at the Unity Project a lot, because we're dealing with trying to stop these vaccine mandates and the craziness that's going on in the state of California, parents come to us all the time and say, what can we do? Because we are desperate. No matter what, the school is saying they are going to move forward. They're going to mass vaccinate. They're going to want to see masking, and the parents are now potentially facing, it wouldn't surprise me, more lockdowns on the horizon. Right. And so they're desperate and they say, what do we do? And I always say it's a very, very simple answer: homeschool. Yeah, cool. It doesn't have to be something elaborate. It doesn't have to be an attempted coup of the school system. You can literally just pull your children out and homeschool. And I think there's so many benefits to that. So tell me a little bit about the Acton Academy. Tell me about homeschooling and how you ended up here.
Oh, so good. And there's so many different ways we can go with that. So I always preface conversations around this on a couple of different things. One, I am very pro good human beings who are teachers and administrators in our school system, right? I always have to give that caveat because people listen to my critiques of the system itself and they go, this guy hates teachers. No. Here's the deal. I was one. Right. I worked at Stanford for a long time, saw the game there. I was a public school teacher. I was a public school administrator. I was then a private school teacher and a private school administrator, all of these in the state of California. So I understand the game inside and out, which is precisely why I left that game to build the campuses that I built. Right. And so I always want to preface it with that. I understand those things inside and out. Part of the way I built my first campus in 2017, was the first Acton Academy campus that I built. I knew two things. One, from a pedagogical standpoint, in terms of how we're educating young people, the conveyor belt school system is set up to do that ineffectively on purpose. So I knew that. So I wanted something that was a different approach as far as how we were actually educating versus schooling. Those are two different things.
Sure.
Right? And then I also knew, because I'd been in the game, that all of these mandates, and obviously I couldn't have predicted COVID, but I knew at every possible turn, and anybody paying attention to SB 277 years ago and all those things, you could see the writing on the wall. This was going to be something that was going to be a problem in perpetuity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I set up our campuses, I set us up in a way that was essentially, we were a homeschool tribe, a homeschool co-op. And I did that very intentionally so that parents could register with the state as homeschool. They could be outside of all this, and then they would pay a membership to Acton, and they would come, and then we'd educate versus indoctrinate, right?
Wow,
So
what incredible forethought.
Proactively doing that. And again, that's just nature of being in the game for so long and paying attention while I was in it, right?
Right.
So, so that's how we set up. And then, at this point, while I'm setting up other Acton academies all over the world, not every other place deals with exactly what California is. So not everybody has to worry about that specific part of the mandates and things like that, but we still take a different educational approach too. So, but I understand there's tuition involved, and I understand that's hard for so many parents, especially when culturally in the religion of school, we've been trained that it should be free. And so it's a big leap to think, oh my gosh, to pay for something else. And I fully get it. But like you said at the beginning, homeschool is another great option. And there's a million ways to do it, none of which should look like school.
Right. None of which should look like school. I love that. And it's just, there's got to be a different way. It's interesting that you said you were a teacher. My mom actually was a school teacher. She actually retired this last April. She spent her entire career really teaching in South Central LA. And I felt like she spent her entire career at odds with the administration for crazy things, right? For crazy things of actually educating the students, providing an incredible learning experience and environment for them. It seemed to be, whenever she did that, it seemed to be that she was the most at odds with the administration. And for her entire career, it was shocking.
I believe that. No, I was always what I called it creative insubordinate. And I was creatively insubordinate, and I got pulled into a superintendent's office. And the conversation was basically, hey, look, we're in a really tough spot. We really want to, from an administrative standpoint, you cause us a lot of headache, cause us a lot of issues. And we really want to, you push back against us and you don't do what we're asking. And we have a hard time with that. It's like, you're being insubordinate. We should let you go. But on the flip side, all of your coworkers absolutely love you, and all of the kids and all of the parents say you're by far the most loved teacher. And it's not because I'm amazing and because I'm special. It's because I valued each one of those humans enough to say, the system that's not serving them, I'm not going to play that game. I'm going to try to unlock what they have, right? And it's at odds with the system of conveyor belt schooling.
So tell me why you think this system has been set up to be this kind of conveyor belt schooling, as you said. And I've got my opinion about what's happened in some of the ideologies that have been presented lately, and the fact that they're, frankly, I would say probably 75% of what children see in schools nowadays, there's no pedagogical value in at all. And I personally experienced that, and having questions at my own children's school. Some of the material that's been presented.
Yeah, for sure. So this is one of those things where I tell people, if you hear this, if it sparks anything, what I would ask you to do is go read anything you can find by a man named John Taylor Gatto. Gatto is the last name. He passed away a couple of years ago and as an American treasure. And by the way, if you're a teacher listening to this, there's a reason you didn't hear about him while you got your teaching credential, because you'd leave. You'd leave the system, right? Because he lays out the system, he articulates it. And this was a public school teacher, mind you, New York State Teacher of the Year twice. He was a public school teacher for 30 years. He defined being creatively insubordinate. So he does a better job on the history part than I do. But the 30,000 foot overview is, this is a Prussian model, right? That was brought over. People have this thought that it's like, okay, I'm sure a bunch of experts got together in a room and they went, okay, how do we really, really set a foundation for educating our population? And so that's why school looks the way it is. So that's why we've always done it that way. And it's quite the opposite. The thought was, how do we create factory workers that are intelligent enough to follow orders, but are wildly obedient and don't have a skill set or a mindset enough to go, this could be better. How do we change the status quo? How do we innovate? Right. And so then that's the foundational level. And then years ago, our teachers unions, which I love the fact that there's a parent union popping up. I think that's fantastic. The teachers unions.
I'm excited too. Teachers unions need to be taken out. They're, in my opinion, the single most corrupt entities. And frankly, I think that they are what is probably single-handedly responsible for keeping us in such a lockdown for so long.
Bingo. On purpose, intentionally. They were taken over years ago. We're talking about, 50-ish years ago, where they were taken over, and it was this slow burn of how do we create, and it was part of a larger scale sort of deal. How do we create all of these issues for our young people? And so, slowly seeping in more and more indoctrination, slowly tightening the reins around any kind of creative ability for the educators who are going in there altruistically, truly wanting to help young kids. How do we handcuff them more and more? How do we slip more indoctrination in? How do we narrow the scope of academia? How do we make sure we're downgrading, family value in society and morals? And how do we, all of that has been slowly trickling in to where we are now. And it's not something that will be fully recoverable without massive political fight and change. I mean, it just won't be.
Sure.
Which is why we're creating something different.
Yeah. It's amazing to me now. We're seeing all this information coming out where teachers are asking students questions and intentionally saying, don't tell your parents. Sure. That to me is like, you're breaking the cardinal rule of parent-child relationships. Think about that. I mean, every parent, the first thing that you teach your children is to be honest and to make sure that they always tell you what's happening for their safety, right? I mean, I know that with my own children, I would always say, if something happens, no matter what someone tells you, you always have to tell me in order to protect you. And then they go to school and they have this barrage of information coming at them. Yep. That is, that it's frankly just radical ideologies being forced down their throat. Right. And then they're told not to tell their families, because the teachers know that the minute these parents know what's going on, it's going to be a huge problem. Right. And it's what I find to be horrible, especially over the last 2 years, is, well, not over the last 2 years, really over the last year since we've been vaccinating the human population, kids are now shamed if they go to school and based on their vaccine status. We early on, when the vaccine started coming out, we started hearing stories of horrific discrimination in the schools where kids, and I'm not making this up, there have been cases where kids were actually put, a star was actually put on them. Yep. And they were told to sit in a certain area because they were unvaccinated. That's right. I mean, when I say that, I go, no, it's the truth, because you almost can't believe it because it's so outrageous. Oh,
it's my all day, every day, because people knew that I didn't I never shut my campuses down. We didn't require any kind of vaccination. We say, hey, there's freedom here. You pick, mm-hmm. right? We didn't require any kind of masking. We said, hey, look, you're free to choose. Everybody chose not to. And so, all day long, every day for the last 2 years. It's, my email, my DMs, my whatever, it's nonstop. So I'm talking to the parents who are going through this. I'm talking to the young heroes who are going through this, or who are made to sit over here because they're refusing their mask. And so then they're being kicked out of school. And I have dear friends who I'm talking to as they're walking out of the school office, so this is real. That stuff is really real.
And the school has found a way to work hand in hand with governmental agencies to weaponize the situation that we're in. I have a friend whose child went to school, refused to wear the mask. The child was then essentially put on the sidewalk and was not allowed access to any of their personal belongings. So this child had to sit on the sidewalk in front of the school for 4 hours before their mother could come and pick them up. I mean, that's blatant child abuse. I've also heard that they do, schools have done that similar thing where they take and they kick the child off of the school property, don't allow them access to their personal belongings, and then they call Child Protective Services and report neglect on the parent.
That's right. And so what does this tell you, right? The school, the primary function of our government schools is obedience.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with this is so multifaceted. And honestly, it is a genius thing that they have done. It's genius because it's like 92% of our population goes through these public schools, right? For 12 years. Mm-hmm. So you've got 12 formidable years to work on a mindset of a human being. And then what happens is that human being has created such a bond with their captor, right? The Stockholm syndrome is so strong that person comes out, no matter what their experience was, they usually feel ill-equipped to educate their own children, or they believe they're ill-equipped. So then they turn around and send their own children back into the same system that left them feeling ill-equipped. And they think that is education. And they feel like it is the thing you have to do. And then, oh, by the way, most private schools who don't have to follow the same kind of format are so indoctrinated as well that it's the same pig, different shade of lipstick. They do the exact same thing, and you create a same kind of problem. This obedient population that can't fully think, can't articulate a thought, can't think critically, isn't capable of civil discourse, right? You've got all of these issues.
And at the end are completely ill prepared to deal with any facet of life, whether it's, to your point, critically thinking, whether it's balancing a checkbook. I'm not even sure. I remember when I was a kid, and this will show you how old I am, but when I was in high school, we actually had to take a class. I think it was part of one of our civics classes. And we actually went over balancing a checkbook. There's no shop classes. There's no home ec classes. To me, what it feels like is there's an overwhelming amount of, for lack of a better term, it's not information. I'm going to say just radical ideologies and thoughts that children are faced with. I'll never forget, I went to my children's school because they had been presented with some information, which seemed a little bit shocking to me. He was presented with information. It was Second Amendment information. And so it had a bunch of satire cartoons. And one of them was a woman who was the Scarlet Letter, and she was cradling her NRA weapon. Or excuse me, she was represented as the Scarlet Letter, but she was the NRA, right? NRA, and then she was cradling her M16 or AR-15. And another one had a picture of a teacher with an AR-15 pointing it at her students, saying, "If you don't do your homework, I'm going to shoot you." And the list kind of goes on. So of course you can imagine, I went down to the school and I said, can you explain to me what this exercise was all about? Can you explain to me what the pedagogical value of this exercise was? And I was told that it was a quote unquote debate, a silent debate, which in and of itself is an oxymoron, because how do you have a debate if you're doing it silently in your own head, other than, being crazy? If you're debating yourself silently in your own head, you certainly can't gain any value out of debating yourself, right? In an educational environment. But when I went down to have the conversation, the first thing that the superintendent of academics said was, I just want to remind you that this is a no place for hate. And I remember saying, can you explain that to me? Was there some impetus for you making that statement? Because that to me seems silly. That would be like me saying, I want to see the sun rise tomorrow. Of course, schools should be a no place for hate. The fact that we now have created this need to make children feel like there's no place for hate. It's almost like it has the opposite impact, right? Where you go, well, why are we saying that it's a place of no place for hate? Of course, that should go without say. Nobody wants to send their children to school to be in a hateful place.
Right. But the real meaning of that is, oh, by the way, we're going to say some things that are woefully inaccurate and woefully, marginalizing and intentionally provocative and oftentimes inappropriate. And then we're going to go ahead and define what hate means, which essentially means you disagree with us. That's hateful, right?
Right.
And so that's what it is, right? It's
Right.
putting the foundation down for, well, if you have a problem with what we are doing and you don't think it's appropriate for young children, we're going to label that as a hateful act, right? It's a hate speech, and that's that's asinine to its core. That's part of that indoctrination. The other interesting or ironic kind of thing with that statement that superintendent made is that, systemically speaking, not just academically do things not transfer over to the real world, right? I don't know when the last time I run multi-million-dollar businesses, I couldn't tell you the last time I did calculus, trigonometry, geography. It's just not some of those.
We do
certain
it
things
every day here at
there's
the Unity
certain things
Project. No, I'm
sure
kidding.
go get it.
I'm kidding.
So not only, academically does so much not transfer over, systemically, the way we operate in schools doesn't transfer over either. I don't ask another human being's permission to go to the restroom. I don't only
Right.
associate with people of my same date of manufacture, where I then automatically look down on people who are younger, automatically revere people who are older. And then create these false social hierarchies where, since I don't have a voice all day because I'm constantly asking for permission, well, then on my free time, the only thing I can do to exhibit some sort of power is to create a clique that then treats other people the wrong way, right? It literally is designed to provoke more bullying type scenarios. If you think about it systemically, the only other system we have in our country that looks sort of similar to that is prison, where you create different people out on the yard and you've got your different cliques and you're different, right? You don't associate with these guys and you don't associate, and we don't have any power during the day. So we create these weird hierarchies to give ourselves some semblance of power, right? It's the closest thing that we have to mimic it.
Wow, that's a really interesting analogy. It's amazing what we put these kids through, right? I was talking to another, I don't know if it was Peter McCullough or one of our other guests, and I was saying that these lockdowns to me feel very much like what we do to POWs in times of war. So, we lock down the country. We tell kids that they can't go to school. We tell kids that not only can they not go to school, which at a developmental time, it's important to have human interaction, right? And have those developmental experiences. We tell them that they literally can't go to parks because all the parks are closed down, all the beaches are closed down, all the hiking trails, right? Everything is closed down. So then they basically are put in a box. I think most kids probably end up just sitting in their bedrooms on their computer on Zoom, right? And then we wonder why in this country we now have epidemic levels of suicide and depression and every other thing that you can think of, the negative consequence for children. And I always say, it's no surprise. I don't know why anyone would act surprised by this. We did exactly what they do to POWs. POWs in Vietnam, they took them, they put them in a box, they socially isolated them, and they broke the human spirit. It's exactly what we've done to our children.
Exactly what we've done. And just to make sure they didn't get any extra boost from their parents, we make sure the parents start facing economic struggles, start facing the loss of jobs, lockdowns on their own, start being fed through media that the world is going to end, they're going to die, their kids are going to die, their kids are going to be taken away from them. We start creating all this panic too, so that the only potential solace these young minds have are their parents, and their parents are mentally broken as well. And so now they're living a life out of fear. And what that does for the young person is, well, now they're seeing this is how you live in fear, right? And that is what they're learning. And it's not just these 2 years, like what we just did to our nation, what we're continuing to do to our nation, we don't even understand fully the ramifications to our young heroes. And it is heartbreaking and it's horrifying. The only solace I have on that is going, okay, well, I know we did right by our kids, and by our kids, I mean the campuses that we had. We kept everything. They weren't affected. they weren't impacted, and that
Right.
was a beautiful thing. And I'm so grateful for that, but my heart breaks extra for people that didn't have that experience.
Right. Well, I mean, think about what was that study that came out that babies that were born during the lockdowns had a 20-point drop in IQ.
Yep,
I,
for sure.
I don't even know how to wrap my mind around that.
For sure.
And I would encourage anyone who doesn't understand the IQ scale, a 20-point drop could literally mean the difference between being an average person or someone who suffers from mental retardation.
Right. And the social emotion, I mean, when you tell people, I have found when I break down the conversation, just go, look, you've heard the studies. I don't know the exact percentage, but what, percentage of communication are the actual words. And most people know that that's a small part of it, right? They understand
Sure.
that the intonation and the way the body language and all of those things are so much more powerful, right? The facial cues and all of those things are so much more powerful, such a bigger component of communication. Cool. Well, you have these young people who are learning and developing how to communicate with others, how to read other people, and they can't. They are literally getting no opportunity to do that because the people that are talking to them and dealing with them have their face completely covered.
Yeah.
During the most fundamentally developmentally important parts of their life. And it's, we created a crumbling foundation to begin with.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What are your opinions on the role of the school in a child's life? There's been this debate, are schools designed strictly for reading, writing, arithmetic, right? Leave the rest to the family and to the community. Or do you believe that schools also should be responsible for an element of helping to raise the kids, some cultural influence, emotional influence, social influence? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a really good question. So the fundamental question here is, what are schools for? Right? What are
Correct.
schools for? So if we go back, what we got to remember is that school is this 100 and some odd year experiment in society. Prior to that, we didn't have schools. We didn't have, community schooling like that. It wasn't a thing. There was community, but there wasn't community mandated schooling. And so people learned by doing. People worked together in a community. You often trained underneath your parent or another mentor of some sort. And you gained a skill set there. Maybe you were an apprentice and you went on to try to provide value and trade with other people that had different, values in that community. So if we're looking at it fundamentally, what should school be for? Well, it should be for the allowance of an education in partnership with the family unit. And I say an allowance because this goes back to what I said at the beginning. Schooling is something that is done to you. And education is something that is unlocked, and it is something that you then have to go find for yourself. So what it should be is a collection of adult mentors or guides, not lecturers, not indoctrinators, not people that tell you what to think and when to think it. Guides and mentors who have some of their own experiences, who then in partnership with the families go, cool, how can we unlock what's inside each one of these people? How can we work together to just amplify the number of experiences this young person gets to have so that he or she can more quickly understand who they are, build confidence from taking on some hard things, right? Get some self-awareness and some self-confidence to then go unleash on the world. That's what the ideal situation should be.
What are you seeing from the kids that go to the academy? Well, describe your academies a little bit more in detail so the listeners can conceptualize. And then I would like to know the positive benefits that you're seeing from children that are learning in these environments.
Yeah, I mean, the benefits are easy because it's what we were just talking about, the self-confidence, the self-awareness. the ability to adapt, the ability to engage in civil discourse, the ability to control their emotions, the ability to understand how to provide real value in the real world, and to maintain relationships that matter in all aspects of that, right? Those are the benefits, because what they're essentially experiencing is life, not school. They're experiencing life, which directly transfers into life. So the way I shake parents up right at the beginning of any kind of informational session is I say, look, our ideal day on our campuses is that none of the adults show up, none of the kids notice, it doesn't matter, nothing changes, and it's still run like a Fortune 500 company.
That's awesome.
You go, oh, that's cool, that's cliche, and I'm like, no, that really happens. It really happens where I can take the adults completely out of a room of a bunch of 8, 9, 10, and 11-year-olds.
Wow.
For the entire day, and they will run their entire day in a productive manner and be excited the entire time. That's real.
Wow.
So we are equipping them with the tools to be able to do that. So that comes in the form of having Socratic conversations every single day, not what to think, how to think, how to articulate your beliefs, how to listen to the other person who may or may not agree with you, how to genuinely listen to them, and then present your evidence, let them present theirs. And at the end of the day, we might go, hey, high five, we disagree, but we're still friends, right?
The Socratic method is so important. I've seen it used in law schools on occasion, but
on occasion, right?
On occasion, but it's one that I think is a really important method.
It's extremely important. And so then they also learn to set their own individual goals from an academic standpoint. And by academics, we don't just mean your, math class, history class. It's if they want to pursue some traditional routes, they're welcome to do so. If they want to learn those same concepts through individual projects, they have the ability to do that as well. My oldest daughter didn't like traditional, or she doesn't like traditional math. She gets kind of bored with that, but she'll make a mock business and create an entire P&L
that's 11, amazing.
At 11 years old. That's math.
Wow. Right? She's probably got the most successful lemonade stand in the entire community. No, I'm kidding.
I always tell people we have horses because my daughters who are 11 and 9 bought the horses with their businesses. So they understand math. So from an individual standpoint, they get to do that, but then they also get to collaborate around real world projects. Every 5 or 6 weeks, they're bringing a project to life in some sort of a public exhibition. And that might be learning how they might be creating a city and figuring out how to run electricity to the city. They might be all starting and launching their own businesses, which many of them will take into perpetuity. They might be creating rockets and testing different fuels and having a competition of setting rockets off. They're doing real world things so that they're gaining that self-confidence because they've done some hard stuff. They're gaining the self-awareness because they go, ooh, I really liked this. I really did not like this. All of that's valuable, right? And then they're taking on responsibility on campus as well. They all have jobs on campus. The younger they are, obviously, the more mundane the job. The older they are, the more comprehensive that responsibility is. They take on massive responsibility. And then all of that earns them the right to take on internships and apprenticeships as they're older, working in fields they think they're interested in. You provide an educational experience like that, so much different than being schooled.
That's a really interesting aspect that we definitely lose in the traditional school setting, that element of responsibility. I think most kids go to school and they get there 8:30, they go to their 4 or 5 periods and they leave. And they go home, and there's no elements of responsibility and accountability infused, accountability outside of maybe doing your homework. But, in states like California, they're now looking to do away with accountability for homework even, and accountability for testing, and talking about doing away with SATs and any form of benchmark. So now it just becomes an environment where your kids just show up, and whether or not they participate or engage is not relevant. And it literally seems to me like it's becoming a place where children are babysat. It's a place for them to go.
Right. Correct. It's to build intentional apathy and an apathetic young person becomes an angry and a lost young person, right? That massive responsibility, it's not just because we want them to learn responsibility. It's because that's how you find purpose. And right, it's because you take on massive responsibility, you take on all of these experiences, and that's what allows you to figure out who you are and what your purpose is, and gives you the tool set to then go dive in and create value in that area. And then, oh, by the way, the byproduct of acting in that way becomes happiness and satisfaction and good relationships, right? So you avoid all of that altogether by just creating apathetic young people from the get-go. Right. We wonder why everybody's so upset.
Do you ever listen to Jocko Willink?
Yeah, I know Jocko. Yeah.
Okay, so you probably know the whole concept of discipline equals freedom, and this, and
it's one of our family rules.
Yeah, it's we used to joke and say it was our Bible, but in our house. But it's true. I think similarly, it's this whole concept of working for something, holding yourself accountable, and learning those skill sets early on that create happiness actually in human beings. I find people, to your point, that are very apathetic are actually incredibly unhappy human beings, kind of floundering through life. And it's sad to think that we're creating generation after generation of human beings that are like this. And to your point, extremely compliant. I mean, if you look at what's going on in society nowadays, we have a virus that has it has statistically zero impact for the pediatric population. So, and I define that by anyone under the age of 18. If you're under the age of 75 and you're a relatively healthy person with no comorbidities, it has virtually no impact. So we have this virus out there, yet that has virtually no impact on the human population. Yet we have a society of people that are tripping over themselves to comply with whatever the government is telling them to do. And the interesting thing is that what the government is telling them to do has tremendously negative consequences. They're telling them to go out and get vaccinated, triple vaccinated, quadruple vaccinated. And we're now seeing the data that's come out as a result of that. They're telling them to go out and get their children vaccinated when their children are at zero risk and they are not vectors of transmission, yet people are tripping over themselves to get to their doctor's offices, get to their, to the local, CVS or Walgreens, and get their kids vaccinated for no reason, because they're complying with what the government is telling them to do, and they're complying unquestionably.
That's right. That's right. And then the other sneaky layer of that too is that even people that don't want to comply, the parents, and again, this isn't a dig on the parents. I just want them to really, really take a look in the mirror and go, is this something I've done? I'm saying I don't want to comply to all of this. So I'm going to go to a school board meeting and I'm going to fight to put my child back into a normal indoctrination center that is essentially an arm of that government system that's created all of this compliance, right? Like I'm telling parents, this should be the wake-up call you need to pull in any way that you can. Let me help you. Let me help you do it effectively. Let me help you do it inexpensively. Let me help you start a whole campus of your own if you want to do that, however you want to do it. But hopefully the writing is on the wall right now of like, look, these government centers are not for us. They're not here for the benefit of our children. So I'm not going to fight and take my energy to fight to put them in there. I'm going to fight to create something different.
So what do you say to parents that go, oh, well, if I pull my kids out of school, I'm a little bit nervous because that means that my kids are just going to be sitting there by themselves and, I'm going to be interacting with them, but they're not going to have any friends. What do you say to parents that say that?
Yeah. So provably false. That they wouldn't have any friends. Yeah, if you're going to lock them in a closet, no, they're not going to have any friends. But as far as the socialization thing, there's a few different points with this. One, you can still get together with people and hang out and have friends, whether that's in a sports setting, whether that's just getting a bunch of friends together, there's a million ways to do that. Two, it's a myth that young people are not quote unquote socialized. If they only hang out with adults, it's actually not necessarily a bad thing to just hang out. As long as those adults are good people leading by example and providing a good example, it can be wildly beneficial for young people. It can actually ramp up their maturity. It can ramp up their desire to be impactful humans on society. It doesn't only have to be, again, people with the same date of manufacture, right? And then the third part, when people say, what about the socialization? Go back to those, what we were talking about earlier, the false hierarchies, right? The systemic parallels to prison. That's the socialization you are fighting for. That's not reality. That's dangerous. That is bad human behavior that you're then pushing them into, right? So that's not worth fighting for either.
Wow. I'm going to forever remember that analogy. It's a really powerful analogy. And I encourage every parent to really think about that, wrap your mind around that, because would you want to send your children to prison to learn social skills, learn, any type of academics? No one would, right? No one would do that knowingly.
We had our Man Uncaged event, myself and 7 or 8 other just phenomenal entrepreneurs. We brought all these dads in and, was challenging them to be better dads, husbands, fathers, leaders, entrepreneurs, all of those things. And we started having this conversation around this and said, look, you want to level up in your life. You want to be better at all of these things. You want to be a better communicator, better dad, better father, better leader, better husband. You want to be all of those things. So what do? You came here to meet with a group of people who are doing certain aspects of that, maybe to a level that you aspire to get to, right? You want to go to that so that you can grow and you can get better. Not one of you went, well, if I'm going to be a leader, I better go to prison and deal with, the shitheads in society because there's crappy people out there. So we just got to realize life sucks. So I'm going to go there. No, of course not. That'd be ridiculous. You make normal what you make normal. Right. So if you make normal, solid, loving, productive, civil interactions that are uplifting, that are providing, like if you make that normal, well, that's normal. So, they're the thought of like, well, we got to teach our kids that life sucks. So when they go out in the real world, they're like, oh yeah, no, you teach them how to be amazing humans who are emotional ninjas, who are wildly capable and wildly confident, so that when they see crap inevitably in society, they go, that's unfortunate. It's not something I want to be a part of unless I'm going to go and fix it.
I love that concept. Wow. There's been a few friends of mine that I know have homeschooled their kids. And I will say that they're incredibly amazing human beings. It is shocking. I think it's to your point. I think we've all have this preconceived idea and notion that in order for people to be fully functioning, for them to not be labeled something odd, that you have to have them in these conventional school systems. What would you say, or how do you handle parents that they want to homeschool their kids, but they don't know how to get started, and how do they connect with other parents? What's the best path? How do people get started in this?
I like that you asked that question. What is the best path? Because there is none, right? There's a million ways to educate. There's one way to school. There's a million ways to educate. And so when parents can grasp that first, that starts to open things up, and you kind of prefaced it with talking about really one of the pervading myths of homeschool. It's going to be, you're going to be weird and all this. Okay. Your kids will do what you do before they do what you say. So if you're weird, your kids might be weird. By the way, you might homeschool, you might public school. I went to public school too, and there were some kind of strange people in public school too, right? So it's not like that was the cure-all, end-all, be-all. That has nothing to do with it. We have this weird correlation with that. So, from a logical standpoint, that doesn't hold up. So when parents are like, hey, look, I don't know what to do. One of the things the first thing I tell them is they've got to do some work on themselves first. What does that mean? Well, one, you got to de-school your mindset. Again, I refer them to John Taylor Gatto to get out of that schooling mindset, to go, oh my gosh, okay, that's not about human development at all, right? Go to him, go to I give them resources like Oliver DeMille's Thomas Jefferson Education, Sal Khan's One Room Schoolhouse, anything by Ivan Illich, Peter Gray's Free to Learn. There's so many great resources to get yourself out of that mindset.
Yeah.
Then you need to make sure you've got your stuff together. Are you angry? Are you living in fear? Do you operate your life like that, right? Do you operate your life where you're telling them to follow their dreams, but you hate your job and they know it and you're not following in your dreams at all? Are you hypocritical where you tell them don't lie to anybody, but then they see you lying to everybody else, right? So you get your own stuff together, get out of the schooling mindset, and then you can sit down and have a conversation. Wow. Go, what do we want to do? Who do we want to be? That's the more important question. Okay. Who do we want to be?
Well, I love that. It almost sounds like this is an exercise in helping all of society, not just teaching, finding the right pathway for education for children.
That's the goal, because there's a million ways to educate, right? And so then once you've decided who you want to be and what problems you want to solve, not what do you need to do and what do I want to be when I grow up? Those are shitty questions. It's who do I want to be?
Those questions.
They're awful questions. Who do I want to be? What problems do I want to solve? Who do I need to be to solve those problems? And if there's certain things I want, who do I want to be to have these particular opportunities? Who do I have to be? Because then you start looking at everything from the lens of personal development, right? Where can I find a mentor that will shoot me in the right direction for learning, not just math, but learning maybe how to run a business and the math that's associated with that. Learning the fact that, hey, there is a legal way to not pay taxes. You can actually play a different 1041 system versus a 1040.
We're going to need to talk after this podcast. No, I'm kidding.
Sister, right? So, So like learning this, I want to be a content creator. Cool. What mentor can I find? Even if it's on YouTube or a great book or a local mentor where I can learn how to really level up my skill set in this. You start looking at the world that way. And if parents start looking at the world that way too, what happens is you're both looking at the world with wonder, you're piquing curiosity every day, and you can't help but just continue to go find answers that you're looking for. It's a beautiful way to live.
Do you see this model working for parents that are 9 to 5 or parents that are working shifts, that they don't have an option for babysitters? Parents. Yeah.
Totally, man. I get that. And that is the hardest thing. By the way, that wasn't accidental either, that we needed 2 incomes, that we've, government has proposed all kinds of ways for dad to leave and mom to benefit from that. Like that wasn't accidental.
Of course not. It was by design, right? It's exactly war on the nuclear family.
That's exactly right. So I fully understand that is a harder thing, but if you're committed to not recreating school, I have helped plenty of single moms who work 9 to 5 to do this. You do need,
interesting.
You do need, you need help, especially if they're young. You need somebody to be able to watch the young person during the day. I get you need a tribe, right? So, and that's what I love about Home Tribe and kind of what we're building with that is connecting you to other people in your community. So maybe you take turns and you've created kind of a pod, or you take turns, and kind of one day they go to this educator and one day they go to this educator, and it just kind of helps free up your schedule. So there's ways to do it. We've got the creativity and the platforms and the networks and all that now to do that.
Tell us a little bit more about Home Tribe, because I don't think we touched on that. And I think it's fascinating. Home Tribe is actually a strategic partner of the Unity Project. I know there's an event coming up. What is it, June 11th?
So we had the event in June. So I just got off a call today. It looks like we're going to actually team up with Charlie Kirk's Turning Point. We're going to push it back to July and make it a Turning Point event.
That's awesome.
San Jose, which is cool. It should just get more eyeballs, and so what I love what Emily Jones has done with Home Tribe, she's on the tech side of it. She's developing essentially an app and a web-based platform where people can pull out, they can start to homeschool, and they can look and go, what resources do I have here in the area or virtually? How can I connect with either other homeschool families or educators that are offering their services on Home Tribe? And I can connect with them to either do virtual or in-person classes. And I can start to piece together and try to just play, again, collecting experiences that are nearby. And so we want to put educators. It's almost this matchmaking thing where we want to put educators from all over the world on there, interested homeschooling parents from all over the world on there. And it's like the Tinder for homeschool, man. Who do I want to hook up with today? I want to hook up with you.
What
and
is
I want
it?
to have
It's swiping.
and just swipe over. Yeah, exactly. So, and it's much more, it's more nuanced than that, but that's the reality of what it is we want to connect because there's so many experiences available. And Emily's done a really good job on that, from the technical side of that. And then Sam Sorbo and I are going to kind of, take the letting the public know about it side of things.
Right. That's exciting because I think that's a really great tool for people who are interested in this. Would you dispel the notion that if a child is homeschooled, they won't be able to get into a great college?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love
and I say that cautiously because I also think the universities are an extension of the indoctrination camps, but
absolutely
go ahead and dispel that.
Oh my gosh. This is all my favorite stuff. So thank you for talking about it. So you are right when you say that the colleges are predominantly the indoctrination centers. It's just an extension, and it's an extension that you pay an exorbitant amount for and go into debt for. College at this point is a bad move for probably 90% of young people. And that's being generous. I did a movie with Dennis Prager and Adam Carolla called No Safe Spaces that should be free right now on Amazon Prime. So
I saw that. I actually went to the movie theater to watch it. Awesome. I took my child to go with me. And honestly, if there's anyone who hasn't seen it, go watch it. It's phenomenal.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. It was a great project to get out there. So that gives people a little bit of an insight. And so when the game of college is, I always tell parents, you probably don't want to play the game in the first place because, again, I work with Fortune 500s. That's how I've made my money. Yes, I build schools, I build mentorship programs, I build all this. That's what I want to do for my impact in the world. I've made my money working with Fortune 500s around the world. I can tell you right now, there are plenty of ways to get the degree required jobs without the degree. If you've got the skill set, the work ethic, the network, those things are vitally, they're so much more important. So the college game is a very easy game to play if you're going to decide to play it. So let's give you Stanford University, for example. 40,000 applications come in. We've got to take a look and go, look, 5% of these we can accept. Anything outside of that, we ruin our rankings in the US News and World Report. All right. So we can only take 5%, regardless if 20% deserve it, doesn't matter, 5%. But there's Aunt Becky wasn't an anomaly, right? There's always a layering system in there. Are you rich? Are you a future donor? Welcome to Stanford University. I don't care if you got a 1.7 and just got out of jail. Do you fill a need? Like you're a point guard or you're a cellist or whatever. We need that. Do you fill the either gender or race quota that we are having to play with this year? Like all of these things come into play. So it's not the meritocracy that people think it is.
Right.
But, oh, hey, by the way, we might only get 5,000 applications that come from homeschool that have a completely different application process. And like 25% of them will get in.
Oh, interesting.
Very.
Wow.
So what I tell people is every university has a different game that they are playing. Sometimes that game changes every year, depending on what kind of games they're into. So it's not even always this meritocracy, but the reality is if you understand how to play the game, homeschool kids are at a massive advantage. Homeschool parents create the transcripts. You can create, here's your 4.0 transcripts, and you can prove it in a number of different unique and interesting ways. It's not just the academic courses. I also started a business. I also ran, I was a mentor in my community. You can make yourself an interesting human and a lot of times apply in a completely different process and actually have an easier time getting in. What I also tell families in California is one of the easiest ways to get into university is to not even graduate from high school.
Really?
Drop out at 16 and then go do your free junior college classes as a 16-year-old, get your 4.0 in your JC, and then you're 18 with an associate's degree and you're looked at as an adult transfer student, which oftentimes is weighted more heavily than if you were 18 coming out of high school with your 4.3. A lot of times you're weighted more heavily there and you can get in that way.
Wow. That's fascinating.
There's a million ways to play the game. Almost none of them are worth playing,
Right.
But there's a million ways to play the game. And again, I just tell parents that so I can go, hey, relax, right? It's
Right.
all good. And then, oh, by
Right.
the way, Discover Praxis and organizations like that are a much better alternative to college than college.
What is that? What is Discover Praxis?
Discover Praxis is an organization that's a 1-year program. It is so post high school. It is 6 months of a virtual self-directed boot camp of sorts where you're learning transferable skills. Then you interview, often with startups, and you interview for 6 months of a position that pays you at minimum the cost of the program. So you've got 1 year debt-free, and 95% of them will roll right into a full-time job paying on average 50 grand to start right away.
Wow.
1 year, no debt, 50 grand versus college, 4, 5, 6 years, lots of debt, no guarantee of a position.
Wow, that sure seems like a better pathway than the thousands and thousands of dollars that people invest. And I always find that, you get out of college and you're no more prepared for life than you were coming out of high school. I started my own company when I was 19 years old. And what I always tell people is that is by and far the best education I could have ever gotten.
That's right.
I also have a college degree, but I will tell you, I would throw my college degree in the trash any day over having had 100%. that the experience of being an entrepreneur and being an entrepreneur at 19 years old.
Yes.
It was, and it remains to be the best education that I ever got.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah. And I've got graduate degrees too, right? So I mean, I did all this. So I would throw mine in the trash too. And I tell parents that same thing. If you would spend, if you wouldn't spend 100 grand for your 18 or 19-year-old to start their own business, but you would spend that 100 grand to send them to a college for 4 years, you don't care about their education. You care about a piece of paper and you being able to put your bumper sticker on the back saying, I'm a Harvard mom and a Harvard dad, so that you can prove to society that you're a good parent.
Right. I think you can still buy those stickers online, right?
That's totally the hack, man. Just buy them and stick them on,
right.
Just stick them on there anyways. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So my goodness. So tell us a little bit more. It sounds like the event that was supposed to happen in June is evolving. Tell us a little bit more about the event, though. I think that it's exciting, and I'm excited for the Unity Project to participate and to support it. But tell everyone about that.
Yeah. So it sounds like, so again, this was just a call today. So it looks like that's where it's going to go. And I imagine the official announcement will come soon. So we're looking at June 2nd or July 2nd in San Jose. It's going to be, in partnership with Turning Point. And it's all going to be about empowering the younger generation. And so we're speaking to kind of the full context, like we were talking earlier. We're speaking to them on how to to navigate this crazy world we are in and to step outside of the common myth of what young people should be and how they should act, and and really equip them with some of those tools, while also talking to the parents about, hey, here's how you raise amazing young humans, while also talking to maybe the older generations, going, look, here's how you can hire and lead and mentor them as well. And so everybody's kind of taking their expertise and going from that. So I'll be speaking on, raising dragon slayers in a time when dragons exist, right? So how to raise strong young people. Sam Sorbo will be there kicking off, and she's got a very compelling story about school and why she's getting involved with Home Tribe. My friend Will Witt will be coming in talking about the challenges that young people face, and I know that there's a bunch of people from Charlie's team, Turning Point. From what I understand, that there's going to be like 14 or 15 speakers, and I don't even know who all is going to be there. I just learned about that connection today. Yeah, so it's going to be a full day event of everybody just, here's how we change everything.
That's fantastic. I hope everyone gets involved. I know, like I said at the beginning when we started talking, is we continuously hear from, whether it's strategic partners or followers, about the necessity of having a resource like what you're talking about, with what's going on with the Acton Academy and Home Tribe. And platform for people to understand how to homeschool their kids and to change this stigma, this kind of pre-existing stigma around homeschooling. And I am excited. We were talking about how awful it has been over the last 2 years and how children have had really suffered the negative consequences and effects. But one of the things that's happened, it's been, I think, a surprising to the school boards and to the government, that parents had really not an opportunity. They were forced to see what was going on. They had a window into the classroom in a way that no one ever knew they would have.
Right.
And we didn't like what we saw.
Yep.
And so things are changing, and I'm starting to see a shift. And I always say, if every person that was upset by vaccine mandates or any other issue that's facing schools right now, if they would pull their children and homeschool them, if they would connect with tools like Home Tribe and Acton Academy and others, you and I might not even know each other. That's because true. We might not even have had the need to have this conversation, because I guarantee that if people start pulling their kids out of school in opposition to what's happening, in particular opposition to the vaccine mandates, guess what's going to happen to the vaccine mandates? They're going to go away. Because the elected officials will understand just how serious parents are.
That's right. It's the massive compliance that's keeping everything going.
Absolutely. The massive compliance. And, to your point, I know it's not a Unity Project mission, but I will touch on it briefly. I know you guys just had an event, but it's also the nuclear family and the destruction of the nuclear family and masculinity and fatherhood and all the things that go along with that.
Yes, ma'am. So, you are absolutely right. And I'm grateful for so many good people that are in that. I'm grateful for what you guys are doing in this fight. I'm grateful. And that's what we need to do is those of us that are seeing, really, I believe seeing this for what it is, just encouraging one another, connecting with one another, and then empowering everybody else to go, look, not only should you fight back, here are options. Here are ways to do it. It doesn't have to be scary. We're here to support you. All right. Take the fear out of all that so that decisions aren't being made based out of anger, based on fear. We're making our decisions based on what do humans actually need? What do our young people need? And I want more good men too. It's a big part of my mission is getting more good men involved with that, with what we're doing with Apogee and all of that too. So, yeah. So
I think it's admirable and necessary, and it's going to be one of the key, I think, pillars to saving our country and stopping what's going on right now. Tell everyone how they can follow what you're doing.
I appreciate that very much. If people want to learn about, Home Tribe, it's easy on hometribe.com, actonacademy.org. So ACTON academy.org. You can learn about the campuses we're launching. I'm active on Instagram just at my name, and then the mentorship program, which right now is just for young men, but I'm heading out to Texas next week, and we're going to throw in we want to build something for the dads and the grown men who want to be mentors to our young men. And that's all through Apogee, APOGEE Strong. Myself and Tim Kennedy rolling with that. So all of those things going on, all on the same mission of building strong young people.
Fantastic. It's been so much fun talking to you today, Matt. You are an awesome guy, and I can't wait to see you. I guess it'll be in July because we're attending, and I think I'm speaking on a panel. So looking forward to seeing you in person, and keep up the good work. Everyone, please go follow what Matt and the Home Tribe team are doing, because I think it's going to be a huge resource for children, for parents, and really saving and changing what's going on in the academic environment. So thank you very much, Matt. From all of us at the Unity Project, thank you for listening to today's podcast. We hope to continue producing content that amplifies voices, strategies, and resources. Please keep in mind that the Unity Project is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that relies on the contributions of our generous supporters to fuel the work we do in this movement. If you value our efforts, please consider making a tax-deductible contribution today by visiting our website at www.unityproject.com and clicking the donate button. We very much appreciate your continued support and confidence, without which our work wouldn't be possible.